Have you ever felt like your mind was playing tricks on you, or that you were being secretly influenced by forces you didn't understand? The human mind is a complex and often baffling thing. We like to think we're in control, but the truth is our thoughts and actions are often driven by unconscious biases, hidden motivations, and deeply ingrained psychological mechanisms. Here on the Man of Thoughts channel, we're fascinated by the inner workings of the human psyche. And in this video, we're going to delve into the dark underbelly of psychology to uncover 5 unsettling truths about human behavior that you may not want to believe. Brace yourselves, because once you see these psychological shadows lurking beneath the surface, you'll never look at yourself or the world around you in the same way again. Have you ever noticed yourself subtly mirroring the posture or tone of someone you're talking to? You're not alone. This subconscious mimicry is called the chameleon effect, and it's more than just a social quirk. It's a fundamental part of human interaction. Think about it. Why do we yawn when we see someone else yawn, or unconsciously cross our legs after our conversation partner does the same? It's a way of building rapport, signaling empathy, and smoothing social interactions. Imagine you're at a business meeting, and the CEO leans back in their chair, steeples their fingers, and begins to speak in a low, measured tone. You might find yourself unconsciously mirroring their posture, subtly adjusting your own voice to match their cadence. This tendency to mimic is hardwired into our neurology. Mirror neurons fire not only when we perform an action, but also when we observe someone else performing that same action. It's as if our brains are wired for empathy, constantly simulating the experiences of others to better understand their emotions. However, like any powerful psychological phenomenon, the chameleon effect has its dark side. Skilled manipulators exploit this tendency, subtly mirroring their target's behavior to gain trust and exert influence. The takeaway here: be aware of the power of unconscious mimicry and use this knowledge to build genuine connections while guarding against potential manipulation. We live in a world of unprecedented choice. Walk into any supermarket and you're bombarded with a dizzying array of products, all vying for your attention. But here's the paradox. While we tend to believe that more choices lead to greater happiness, the reality is often quite the opposite. Too much choice can lead to analysis paralysis, a state of indecision and anxiety that arises when we're overwhelmed by the sheer number of options available. It's the curse of the modern consumer. We spend hours researching the best product, only to be plagued by buyer's remorse the moment we click purchase. Imagine you're shopping for a new pair of jeans. You walk into a store with a simple goal in mind, only to be confronted with a wall of denim, each pair boasting a different cut, wash, and price tag. The initial excitement of choice quickly gives way to a sense of overwhelm. You start second-guessing yourself, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong decision. This phenomenon isn't limited to consumer goods. It affects our relationships, careers, and even our sense of identity. With endless possibilities at our fingertips, it's easy to fall into the trap of grass is greener thinking, constantly wondering if we've made the best choices, or if we should keep searching for that elusive, perfect option. The paradox of choice highlights the importance of setting boundaries and embracing constraints. By limiting our options, we free up cognitive resources and reduce the anxiety associated with decision-making. This doesn't mean we should settle for mediocrity. It means being intentional about our choices, defining our priorities, and accepting that good enough is often the healthiest and most liberating option. Remember that time you tripped in the hallway at school, convinced that everyone saw your embarrassing stumble? Or that presentation you gave where you were sure your voice was trembling and your palms were sweating, only to have no one mention it afterward? This is the spotlight effect in action, a cognitive bias that tricks us into believing we're being observed and judged far more closely than we actually are. It's as if we each carry an invisible spotlight with us, illuminating our every flaw and misstep for the world to see. But here's the reality. Most people are far too preoccupied with their own anxieties and insecurities to pay much attention to ours. This isn't to say that people don't notice us at all, but the intensity of scrutiny we imagine is often wildly out of proportion to reality. We tend to overestimate the salience of our actions and appearance, assuming that others are as attuned to our every move as we are. Think back to a time when you were worried about something superficial, a bad hair day, a pimple on your chin, a stain on your shirt. Chances are, no one noticed or cared nearly as much as you did. And even if they did notice, it likely made far less of an impact on their overall impression of you than you imagined. The spotlight effect is a byproduct of our egocentric worldview. As the protagonists of our own lives, we naturally place ourselves at the center of our own narratives. However, this self-centeredness can blind us to the fact that everyone else is equally caught up in their own internal worlds. Understanding the spotlight effect can be incredibly liberating. It allows us to step back from our self-imposed scrutiny and recognize that our perceived flaws and blunders are often far less noticeable or consequential than we fear. It's a reminder to be kind to ourselves, to embrace our imperfections, and to stop worrying so much about what other people might think. Imagine you're walking down a busy city street when you see someone lying injured on the sidewalk. You might assume that with so many people around, someone would have already stopped to help. But sadly, that's not always the case. This unsettling phenomenon is known as the Bystander Effect, a social psychological theory that describes how individuals are less likely to offer help in an emergency situation when other people are present. The more bystanders there are, the less likely it is that any one individual will take action. This isn't because people are inherently callous or indifferent. It's due to a complex interplay of psychological factors, including diffusion of responsibility, social influence, and fear of embarrassment. When multiple witnesses are present, there's a diffusion of responsibility. Each individual assumes that someone else must have already called for help or intervened, leading to a collective inaction. It's a tragic example of the someone else's problem mentality. Social influence also plays a significant role. In ambiguous situations, we look to others for cues on how to behave. If no one else seems alarmed or concerned, we're more likely to interpret the situation as non-urgent, even if our instincts tell us otherwise. There's also the fear of embarrassment. In a crowd, we're less likely to want to stand out or risk looking foolish by overreacting. This fear of social judgment can prevent us from taking action even when we know someone is in need. The bystander effect is a sobering reminder that our actions or inaction are often shaped by the social context in which we find ourselves. It's a call to be aware of these social pressures and to cultivate the courage to act, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Have you ever held two conflicting beliefs simultaneously, creating a sense of mental discomfort? This is cognitive dissonance, a psychological phenomenon that occurs when our actions and beliefs are misaligned. It's the uneasy feeling we get when we catch ourselves behaving in ways that contradict our values or when we hold two contradictory opinions at the same time. This mental discomfort arises because our brains strive for consistency and coherence. When we encounter information that challenges our existing beliefs or when our actions contradict our values, it creates a state of cognitive dissonance that we're motivated to reduce. We don't like to think of ourselves as hypocrites, so our minds find creative ways to rationalize our inconsistencies. We might downplay the importance of the conflicting belief, justify our actions, or even change our attitudes to align with our behavior. Imagine you're a staunch advocate for environmental protection, yet you find yourself frequently driving instead of walking or biking. This discrepancy between your values and actions might create cognitive dissonance. To reduce this discomfort, you might rationalize your behavior by telling yourself that driving is necessary for your busy schedule, or that your individual impact is insignificant. Cognitive dissonance can be a powerful motivator for change, but it can also lead to self-deception and resistance to new information. Understanding this phenomenon can help us become more aware of our own biases and make more conscious, aligned choices. So there you have it, 5 unsettling psychological facts that reveal the shadow side of human nature. But remember, acknowledging these dark truths isn't about succumbing to cynicism or despair. It's about cultivating self-awareness, understanding the forces that shape our thoughts and actions, and ultimately, using this knowledge to become more conscious and compassionate individuals. By shining a light on the unconscious biases and psychological mechanisms that drive our behavior, we can begin to break free from their grip and make more intentional choices. The journey of self-discovery is often uncomfortable, but it's through confronting these difficult truths that we can truly grow and evolve.